Welcome to Light News Radio, Realms of Self-Empowerment, now in our 5th year of broadcasting, bringing you topics on the mind, body, spirit, and the tools and techniques to awaken you to higher states of consciousness. I am Dr. J, your host, and my amazing co-host is Deirdre Leighton. Together, we bring you grounded metaphysics, where the spiritual rubber hits the road, real life teachings and applications that are pertinent and relevant to you. Here you can breathe the fresh air of real consciousness education while avoiding the hype and the fascination. We are all about assisting you to empower your life through understanding your true spiritual nature. So come aboard our beam of light and enlighten your load as we travel the waves of knowledge and wisdom for the next hour. How you doing, Deirdre?
Great. I'm doing wonderful. I'm really looking forward to this show today.
Me
because
too.
we cover so many topics with individuals, and now that we are getting a database of information, our wonderful listeners, hello there, wonderful listeners, are able to go onto lightnews.org, and you can see them through our YouTube page or on Facebook, as you're seeing right now. And so this is really cool. I'm sorry that you're not going to be able to interact quite the way you want to today for this show, but know that you can put your comments in. We will look for them and everything. So it's exciting. The age of technology has grown so much from when I first started using a computer 20 years ago. And it's just, I only started using it.
Well, I think it was 10 years ago this month that the iPad came out. And just before that, everything was netbooks. Remember these little 8 or 9-inch computers, that were like small laptops, and everything was going to be netbooks. And all of a sudden, this thing called the iPad came out, changed everything. And so think about young people, you're 8, 9, 10 years old, and you're starting out with an iPad. So, you're used to that. So every generation goes through this change, but the rapidity, or as you say, how things are going quicker,
Yes.
it is sometimes a little daunting to catch up to. And what's really interesting is I've been giving that some thought. If this was 200 years ago, the universe would still be unfolding as it should.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
And with the proliferation of knowledge, like Facebook, there was a Bill Murray post the other day on Facebook that says, we're spending a lot of time comparing ourselves to each other based on what we've achieved and what we know and how far we've progressed. When in reality, as Yogananda said, you can't be any closer to the divine than you already are. Because you live in a oneness.
And
so
that's
there's nothing to catch up to. But so many of us feel like, oh, technology, we can't catch up, we can't know, when you already are a part of all things. I know that's difficult, but we always think, oh my God, I don't know this, I don't know that, and I'm not current on this. And yet, here we are, one with all things.
And that's interesting because you brought that up perfectly, because our show today is about subtle energy modalities. And, it's exactly the same. When I look at the bigger picture of what subtle energy modalities are, they all come down to the root, love. So our topic today, listeners, is subtle energy modalities, and we'll be discussing what a subtle energy modality is, but also how it works or how they work, and a few of different modalities that are out there and how they work together, or how, as you say, and it just went from my mind totally, sorry, brain fart moment, that we are all connected as one.
Yes.
So when we look at all of these different types of modalities and realize how interconnected they are.
And there's a lot of science out there, Dee, and I know we've got a raft of questions that we're going to ask. Of course, this show has been pre-recorded, so we don't have the opportunity for people to come in with their questions, although you can always connect with us on lightnews.org, our website, lightnews.org. But there's a lot of science out there that talks about the non-local effects of these types of things. And so, okay, Deary, that was very loud, whatever you just did.
Sorry, I was moving some papers across the front of my computer. So
and the computer went.
It went,
What in the
Don't
world
do
is
that.
that?
Don't do that.
So there's a lot of science, into what are the non-local effects of energy work, energy healing, energy medicine, energy psychology. And so we want to get into that a little bit today is, what is the difference and what are the similarities? But there are some differences.
There
And
are.
there is a lot of science that
Mhm.
does establish one person can work on another regardless of the distance. That distance is no factor in doing what we call energy work. It's a very easy term to throw around, but not always so easy to explain to someone who doesn't know. I remember one time I was in Canada and I met an MP, Minister of Parliament, and I was
Oh.
introduced to him as an energy worker. He says, "Oh, you're in oil and gas, aren't you?" And I said, well, not exactly, but that was his level of understanding what energy worker really meant, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's good for us to have these discussions as to, what is subtle energy? Why the term subtle? What does that mean? So do you want to
Exactly.
start? Do you want to start with that, Dee?
Well, what I wanted to talk about is, yes, subtle energy is a term that we use.
Yeah.
But there are many different types of subtle energy.
Many
healing.
modalities.
Many modalities out
Uh-huh.
there. And so when we look at subtle, it's something that isn't necessarily registered. It's not something that you can literally feel as a tangible thing. It's very subtle. It's like, when a baby gives you a kiss on the cheek, or when you're blowing a kiss across the room,
Mhm.
and people don't feel it, but the intention of the whole process is there. So subtlety means something that isn't quite registering on a level of.
Well, it's not registering on a physical level.
Exactly.
The entire reason for using the word subtle is because there is a flow to it, and yet it's not a physical flow. So example, a lot of us have gone to acupuncturists. An acupuncturist is a person who uses needles on acupuncture points located all over the body to stimulate or sedate these meridians that control the flow of energy through the body, for the glands and the organs, the muscles, the tissues, and so forth.
Yes.
And so the pulse that they take, when they put their fingers on your wrist here and they take the pulse, none of those pulses physically exist. And yet the trained acupuncturist
Can feel them.
must go one by one to different pulses. There can be 6 pulses, there can be 9, there can be a number. If you're a Tibetan doctor, there's even more. But none of these pulses are physical, and yet they have to do with a type of energy we call subtle, that is more commonly called chi,
Right.
or sometimes it's called ki, sometimes it's called prana, sometimes it's called orgone. It's called by many names, but this is the type of energy that flows through the interstitial tissues, the glands, and the organs of your body, but is not a physical energy. So this is difficult because subtle means not related to the physical dimension.
Yeah.
Or time and space, and yet it still flows through your body when the acupuncturist wants to access and modify how that energy is flowing through your body.
Yeah, exactly. And so when we think about that, you could also call it your life force energy.
Yeah.
And I know that a lot of our listeners can relate to that word, because that word is specifically used in other modalities. Yes. Such as healing touch or Reiki or the theta, and so different modalities will use that specific phrase or that word.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
when we look at then of the subtle energy, and we look at how it all works, what is the key element of this type of energy? The key element is our connection to all that is. Our key element is connecting as above and so below, and we are that in unison. But it's really hard to explain that in I would say layman terms to the general public, because again, we go back to there is no time or space when we're dealing with this type of work.
Yeah.
And so trying to put it into a box is like putting a round peg in a square hole.
I've been an energy practitioner for almost 30 years now. And wrapping our arms around what this is has taken the root of the esoterics, the people who are simply spiritual people who understand very clearly how the energy works, whether it's the shaman or the priest or the reverend or the mystic, or maybe the yogi, swami. But on the other side is the scientific community who wants to be able to establish that empirically this type of flow can be measured. And the thing about something beyond time and space, like whether it's meridians of the body or the chakras, is that we cannot measure it directly. We can measure what it does to the body, how it affects the body, how it makes the body react, but we can't measure it directly. So we have a lot of ways to interpret how the subtle energy flows. And yet people like you and me, who are trained energy workers, can clearly observe this energy in different ways, clearly modify the energy, clearly have the power of this energy flow through us and make immediate effects in the mental, physical, spiritual, and emotional states of that person.
Exactly.
And this is part of the reason, I think, Deirdre, why it has been called many names.
Yes.
Because, in India, we call it prana. In China, we call it chi. In Japan, we call it ki. And here, maybe we call it life force. I mean, even the words Reiki, Rei means universal, and Ki means that life energy. So
exactly.
we have a lot of different ways of accessing and naming, a rose by any other name would be the same, but we have lots of different ways of interpreting, because we are working with something that is not physically based, and yet we sense it, we know it, we are that. The chi with you and I are flowing through our bodies right now. Whether you're aware of it or not, it's still happening. But as we attune our awareness to these qualities, we find that we can become channels or influencers or facilitators of this energy to facilitate healing in other people.
And it's interesting that you had said in that description that it's been around for centuries.
Oh my!
Throughout the history of mankind,
and in many different cultures.
Exactly, many different energy healing modalities are practiced around the world in really rich cultural traditions. And as you said, it's evolving into scientific knowledge.
Yeah.
And there's a really deep understanding that it's all connected to spiritual life, and these techniques or modalities or practices over time have developed in such a way that the individuals practicing them or facilitating really do help the other individual, whether it's shamanism,
dramatically,
ICT, Reiki, healing touch, theta, whatever modality it is.
And by ICT, you mean integrative chakra therapy.
I do. And so what I wanted to let our listeners know is that of the healing modalities, there are several different types that are out there. There's the touch, where you actually touch the physical form of the body.
Mm-hmm.
There is a vibration, such as sound or even electromagnetics and things like that. There's the vibration, the mind, concentrating on meditation, relaxation techniques, even entrainment, different things like such as Dr. Jeffrey Thompson.
Brainwave entrainment techniques, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Channeling, such as bringing forth from the other dimension information coming forward for the individuals that are still here. Chakras, what you teach. You
Mm-hmm.
teach about the chakras, what they represent, why they represent that. And then as we've been talking all along here about meridians, that
Mm-hmm.
energy that flows.
Yeah.
And it's interesting that when we talk about these different types of modalities, that your training, integrative chakra therapy, touches on every single one of them.
Yeah, it's very interesting. You know, early on in my own research, I wanted to know two sides of the same coin. You know, I developed myself spiritually so I could, in a clairsentient or clairvoyant way, see the subtle energies in the body, you know, the chakra system and so forth. But also the scientific study so we could explain in a way so someone could understand that this is real. It's not just smoke and mirrors. So for me personally, I needed to have both sides of the same coin. Of course, it's what I teach my students. The difference is that the Reiki is more related to this dimension because it flows through the tissues of the body, and there has been research as to the rate of flow. You know, like for instance, in your nervous system, if you stub your toe, that signal takes a certain amount of time to reach the brain.
Right.
If you put an acupuncture needle in a point on your ankle, it takes a lot longer for the energy to flow through the meridian to a different part of your body. So we've measured this. So Reiki is more related to space and time, whereas on the level of the chakras themselves, it's what we call non-local. It means that it is effective no matter the distance. So if Deirdre is sitting in her office in Calgary, Canada, and she wants to work on somebody in London, England, that's no problem. Whether it's making an assessment intuitively as to what the chakras are doing or how the chakras are affecting those four archetypes, meaning not just the body, but the mental, spiritual, and emotional archetypes. And so the method that I came up with many years ago, and I don't want to turn this into an advertisement for ICT, but the method that I came up with is based on my theory that one chakra is more dominant than the others, but that chakras influence in that each chakra has one or more intuitive abilities that are always on and always active, influence
Right.
the way we respond to reality. Whereas there are many valid, effective modalities like Reiki, Touch for Health, quantum touch, and so forth that are
EFT.
that we are marching side by side forward, being very victorious in helping the more established mainstream community to understand that this is not only real, but it's been real for thousands and thousands of years and practiced by ancient cultures. And this is one of the beautiful things about the time we're living in, is this knowledge is now becoming available to everyone.
And I think that's key, is understanding that everyone has the ability to tune in and to connect.
Even better. Yeah.
And it's important to note on that sometimes it just takes you to realize that or to see it for yourself.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, when I started my practice many years ago, I started off with Reiki. And I have said this in shows before, that I was looking for something more. And so I progressed through different programs to find something that encompassed everything that I felt was important in my learning and development. And
so there are similarities and there are differences with the modalities. Yeah.
Yeah. And so it's important to remember that when we're classification or classifying these different types of modalities, that it comes down, as we said at the beginning of the show, to one thing, and that is me as a conduit being centered and grounded and coming from the place of love.
Love. Yeah. The foundation is love.
Yeah.
And one of the things we talk about is, in doing truly effective healing work is a place of inner harmony, that the energetic healer is in that place of altruistic love. love beyond personal boundaries, love that is based on a universal form of love.
Right.
And when we talk about our foundation in love, we also say, to what lens do we focus that love? And we call that lens faith. And faith is trusting with your heart what your mind cannot yet know. So we go back to the beginning of Life News Radio today. And how does the acupuncturist measure your meridians? And we have so many acupuncturists functioning all the time in so many countries. We don't think a thing about it, but yet, how is it they're taking your pulse? So it's the same thing with the type of energy work that Deirdre and I do, is we sense that quote unquote pulse as the sensation of the consciousness that flows through the chakras that affect those 4 archetypes of the whole human being: mental, physical, spiritual, and emotional. But our foundation in service is always love. And we focus that love through the lens of faith by trusting our intuition that we can clearly observe the chakras and thus the condition of the character of the person in this lifetime, what they came here to do, what they came here to learn, and the life lessons and so forth.
So energy medicine and energy psychology, what is the connection?
Well, they're actually bound together, although there is a form of energy work called energy psychology, which is accessing the innate knowledge through the emotions and tissues. An energy psychology practitioner might say the issues are in the tissues, and so they might use muscle testing or a variety. There's a whole
EFT and those, yes.
Oh, NLP, EFT, and a whole cornucopia of letters and syllables to denote a way you can access the psychology of the person. And yet, in my training, that's precisely what we do, because my first book is called Eye of the Lotus: Psychology of the Chakras, which in fact, right now, I'm in week 5 of a 10-week course of teaching master's and PhD students psychology of the chakras at the California Institute for Human Science. Energy medicine would be more directly related to the healing and curing of patterns in the body that are related to disease, infirmities, pain, suffering, things that are of the body, but are related to also the emotions, limiting belief systems, karma, mission statement. So really, the type of work that we do more addresses all 4 states, those 4 archetypes within those 2 categories: energy medicine and energy psychology.
And I was going to say to that there's a lot of belief pattern changing and things like that happen on an unconscious level.
Yeah.
While people are doing this kind of work, because it's subtle. You don't necessarily see it right away.
Yes.
And so we go back to that again.
It's really true.
We go back to that subtle energy.
Really true. It's really true, because some in ICT, and I want to talk about the other modalities, but in ICT, we do the actual work as facilitators or conduits of healing, but then we give an assessment. And so there's times when we give the assessment that the person may not fully understand what we were saying. And then a couple months later, they go, oh, I see now, I understand what you were saying when you were giving an assessment of the healing work that was passing through you. And so this is, when people come for this type of work, one of the things we don't understand is the first thing you were talking about, Deirdre, is how connected we really are. So
exactly.
when you as a person go to see a healer, there is, in my understanding, that on some level we chose that healer to be the best possible resource for us. So we might go through a litany of healers, but those healers are representing the best possible way that we chose to heal. So we talk about when people get on the table for our work, they already chose us, and our job is to understand what that choice is and to help them understand a choice they already made.
And that can go for any modality.
Yes.
That people will make that
any
choice.
Modality. Yes.
Any modality.
Mm-hmm.
So I did some research a few weeks back with regards to trying to find out what the top 10 modalities are that people are using today.
Uh-huh.
And I found that quantum touch, which is developed by Richard Gordon, was one of the number one. And when I looked at quantum touch, I realized that it's based on resonance and entrainment of energy vibration through the breath or through breathing. Now, if I'm wrong on that, individuals, please do correct me. I don't mind knowing that if I'm wrong, but that was my grounded understanding in researching that.
Okay.
Then I went on to EFT, which we know as emotional freedom technique.
Right.
And I found
Tapping.
the tapping of, and it's on the acupuncture meridians in the body, and it's combined or can be combined with positive affirmations, you know, helping yourself really instill what what the work is that you're doing.
One of my colleagues, Kathleen Rick, was responsible for bringing EFT to the forefront.
Oh, that's very cool. That's very cool. The next one that I found, so number 3, of course, is Reiki. And, you know, Reiki is made up of the 2 words of which represent God's wisdom or to the higher power, or chi energy or ki energy, which is, as many, we talked about this at the beginning, the life force energy.
Yes.
So Reiki uses symbols, and it can also use touch around the body. And they are, as we do, working as conduits of life force energy and that connection to source in whatever way you want to call it, right?
More noise across your keyboard.
Yeah, sorry about that. And then we have restorative touch. And restorative touch, I'm not really familiar with. I do have a girlfriend who is studying it right now. But it's working with the person's highest potential. So their highest best interests, their what their soul desires. And then working and collaborating and aligning the body in an energy field of its highest potential. And so they work with the hands, but they're working in the energy fields of their clients or the people that they're serving. We have from Barbara Brennan, the Brennan Healing Science, which, you know, she was a NASA scientist, such as you worked on space launch.
I did.
And she wrote The Hands of Light and things like that. And she speaks of energy consciousness and the energy consciousness system. So she is working around the chakras in certain ways. And as we call it, the toroidal energy field that surrounds us, right? Yeah. And then we have healing touch, which is number 6. And it's also known as therapeutic touch. You talked a little bit about that. And it's with regards to our magnetic field around our body and how we work with that and the energy centers that control the flow of in our energy field and our physical body. Okay. And then, of course, there's pranic healing, which is number 7. And it was a Philippine, a Chinese descent, Master Choco Su, if I pronounce that wrong, I'm sorry. But it's claimed to be a healing system founded to help individuals treat, again, the energy body and the physical body together. So then he's done some studies, but nothing that I could find that was really peer-reviewed. Then there's theta healing, and that's working with the theta brainwaves of the mind, and that connection to what is called the creator of all. And then we move on, and that was number 8. And then we move on to longevology, which is another one that I wasn't too familiar with until I started looking into it. But it's energy healing modality, can sometimes involve it to take this course, a heavy cost. But what it deals with is a modality that a volunteer comes in and it's been practiced in monasteries and things like that, and it's performing healing work towards your life force energy, but it's through the chakra system, or more so through the chakra system than many of the other ones have been.
Okay,
Longevity. And then finally, the 10th one that I found was the Wonder Method. And that's, again, another energy form which helps individuals, in my understanding, awaken their core self to overcome life challenges. So they're looking at, in my mind, you know, karma and things like that that would come up, or seeds of karma that would come up.
Excellent.
And then again, we teach that that's related to the chakras. So you can see out of these 10 modalities that I've looked at over the last while, that a lot of them interfold together.
Yes.
That a lot of them work together.
They're interwoven.
And they're interwoven. So, you know, learning one specific modality only benefits the other modalities that you may already have in your tool belt.
And those top 10 are probably a fraction of all of the many. Well, because we all have different perspectives. You know, it all leads to the same place. And those 10 are very popular. But, you know, listeners, when you're looking for a modality where you live, you might find something that's not on that list that's equally every bit as good.
Yeah.
And the thing is, you know, our perspectives are shaped by the way we take in information. It's just that most of us don't think that we take in information beyond our five senses. We think, okay, our eyes are looking at the video, our ears are hearing it, you know, touch, smell, taste. But your intuition is on 24/7. But the intuition also is very similar to the five senses, because sometimes people, quote unquote, see things. Sometimes they hear things. Sometimes they just know, clairsentience. So there's different types of intuitive abilities that you, as a person who's seeking healing, may not know you're already using. Or you, as a healer, may be more attuned to seeing something, so you develop a form of healing based on your inner vision.
Yes.
Or another healer develops a form of healing based on vibration, sense perception. And so these all go to the same place. It's just that we have different perspectives of how we interpret what subtle energy is. And you're in a sea of subtle energy at all times.
The time.
You know, the walls do not stop the subtle energy from coming through. And so, you know, you're always connected to all things at all times, which may be a little unsettling for some. And yet the energy practitioner is trained to tune into these qualities, not quantities, these qualities, just like going back to our acupuncturist example. He or she is trained to tune into a qualitative state, something that cannot be physically measured, but they put their fingers on your wrist and they go, oh, heart meridian, oh, gallbladder, triple heater, and so forth. But they are trained to measure it in a way that doesn't physically exist. And yet, each one of us has a different way of tuning in. Some are visual, some are kinesthetic, some are auditory. So it works in both ways. You seeking the healing, or the practitioner that develops, oh, I found a new way of doing healing work. Yes, according to the way that you perceive it and then how you put that information out. And that's why Deirdre can read off to you the top 10, but there's probably
100.
100 million, as many ways as there are people.
Exactly. And I was going to say that, you know, when it comes to any type of healing modality, it always comes from what resonates best with you. Because if you try to work with something that you really don't understand or don't feel connected to, the chances of you being able to develop that into a practice that will be effective is really difficult.
Yeah, if you're seeking to be a practitioner and follow, but you know, I believe that all of us are guided from within.
Yes.
that we all find a practice that works for us, whether you're going to learn to do the practice to be a facilitator, or whether you're simply going to receive the benefits of that from a trained practitioner. But the intuitive abilities in all of us are always on 24/7. And that's the thing about the chakras, is they're never closed, they're never blocked, they're on 24/7. So therefore, our intuitive faculties are on all the time. We may not have cultivated them, like certain muscles may not be strong and toned, but the intuitive muscles are still there. So, Deirdre and I are always going to encourage you to develop those intuitive muscles, because you'll see things for yourself much more clearly.
Well, and it's interesting that you brought that up, because last weekend I was in Kimberley, British Columbia, and I was talking to a group of individuals with regards to what I call Chakras 101. And it was important for me to share with them that no matter what you plan to do with your life, having a grounded understanding of who you are, why you're here, and what you can do to help yourself grow and develop,
yes,
is the most important thing. Because as we always say, or as I always say, if you don't fill your own cup first when it comes to care for self,
right,
you can't care for anyone else.
You can't really help anyone else.
No.
And a lot of healers can make that mistake where they work, but they never recharge or restore themselves.
And that's where I was going with that, is that, it's important that even though there are all these modalities out there, and that Richard teaches a phenomenal course, Integrative Chakra Therapy, that no matter what you're doing, if you are a practitioner, you must take time to remember to take care of yourself. The Wounded Healer, I believe it's called, with, her name just went from me. You used one of her books in your recent.
I know, and I'm having trouble remembering too.
Damn. Oh, well, anyhow, Carolyn Mace, and she talks about
Mace, yes,
and she talks about the Wounded Healer and different things, and it's really important to remember that. And there are many, many lovely, good books out there.
Yes.
You get a grounded understanding of what any type of subtle energy medicine.
And we can help you with book suggestions. If you got any questions, contact us at lightnews.org, lightnews, LIGHTNEWS.org. Contact us and ask us questions. We're happy to help point you in a direction that's going to work best for you.
And please, once this is up, you're welcome to write your questions below, or we'll have it on Facebook, and please share, and YouTube, and you can write in your questions. So I'm just going to ask this question because I think it's really important. Is there scientific basis to subtle energy healing?
You mean verification?
Yes.
Oh, yes. Oh, there's a ton of work out there. Whether it's Beverly Rubik, or we have a lab with that's associated with California Institute for Human Science, CIHS.edu. The lab is called SciTech, and they do subtle energy research using devices called GDV, the BioWell, heart rate variability. There's a ton of ways, the AMI, that we are scientifically verifying that subtle energy work is real, that the results are effective, that it can be validated, and we are now partnering with the Chopra Foundation with what's called ESHAR, which is the integrative. I forget the acronym, but it is the Wikipedia of subtle energy research and integrative science. And so the point being is that there is so much information out there that is verifying scientifically what the yogis, swamis, gurus have been saying, is that the spirit of the human being is real, that subtle energies are who we are, and that we can access these subtle energies, and we can take benefit from people who are practitioners and learn how to use the flow ourselves to achieve great forms of healing, but most importantly, the integration of the mind, body, spirit as one.
Exactly. And we had Dr. Thornton Streeter on our show
Yes,
last year.
Biofield viewer.
And he was amazing at explaining that.
Mm-hmm.
So I hope that we have, in this short period of time, covered some of the aspects that we feel is really important for you to understand about subtle energy medicine and subtle energy healing. And again, you can go to Richard's website and find more information on what he teaches. You could also drop us a line, because he does have new classes that start every fall and every spring. So this spring in 2019, he has a class starting in Calgary, February 23rd and 24th. Yep. And in San Diego, March 9th and 10th. So please don't hesitate to give me a shout at info@lightnews.org, or give me a call at 877-242-5721.
And ask us your questions. It doesn't have to be related to what we do. If we can help point you in the right direction of your own self-empowerment, that is what we are truly all about. So, of course, thank you so much for listening to Light News Radio, Realms of Self-Empowerment. I'm your host, Dr. J, and our amazing co-host is Deirdre Leighton. What a talented spirit she is. And we invite you to come visit our website. There's all kinds of good goodies on there for you. So, of course, as always, may the principles of harmlessness and compassion be the ever-present, ever-constant guide of your every intention, of your every thought, and of your every action. And so it is, so it shall be, it is done. Thank you very much. Stay attuned, everyone. See you next time.